Nathan, the floor is yours.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's virtual neighborhood meeting for a project known as Longmont Gateway North. My name is Nathan Jones. I'm a principal planner here with the city of Longmont, and this meeting is being live streamed currently, and it will be saved to the city of Longmont's YouTube channel for future reference. Next slide, please. So before we get into the topic for tonight, I just wanted to go over some agenda items. Here in just a second, I'll go through introductions. I'll introduce the city team as well as the applicants team. I'll also provide an overview of the meeting and format that we're going to follow. I'll hand it over to my colleagues to go over a short city presentation where we're going to focus on some project items and just the process in which this project is gone through so far and will be moving forward in the future. The applicant has a short presentation as well. And then finally, at the end, after the presentations, there'll be an opportunity for public comment and questions. And we'll get into some more detail on that here in just a second. But first, so some introductions. As I mentioned, I'm Nathan Jones. On the call with me as well, I have Jennifer Hewitt-Apperson, who is our long-range planner. And she's principal planner as well. She worked on some aspects of this project already. We also have Kristen Cody, who is a senior planner and who will be the project manager for this moving forward. And we have Dallas Stiles, who is our digital media specialist, who will be helping facilitate the meeting as well. On the applicant side, we have Chris, James, Candace, I'm running through the list, Frank, and Richard, is that right? So that's everybody on the applicant team. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a virtual neighborhood meeting. It is currently being live streamed. And it's really intended for the applicant to provide an overview of their project and for members of the community to call in and ask any questions that they may have or make any comments about the overall project. So we'll get to the question and answer period at the end. Between the presentation and the Q&A section, there'll be a short 5-minute break, during which time folks listening in will be able to call in. We'll have a phone number, a call-in number posted on the screen. You'll be able to call in if you're listening, and that's how you'll enter the live stream and be able to make your comments or ask any questions. When you call in, we ask that you mute yourself just so that there's no feedback. And when it's your turn to speak, we will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Next slide. So at this stage, I think I'm going to hand it over to Kristen, and she's going to go through project overview.
Thank you, Nathan. So this evening, we are looking at the project overview for the proposed Gateway North and East and West Side annexation and concept plan amendment. This is a mixed, the west side is proposed to be a mixed-use development. The totality of it is approximately 48.43 acres along Main Street and Park Ridge Avenue. As you can see, the easterly side is proposed for higher density residential, and that property has been previously annexed into the city with a concept plan. The westerly side has some plans for low density residential, some higher density residential and park area, and that needs to go through the annexation concept plan and comp plan amendment processes. Next slide, please. Project process and overview. So the proposal is for mixed use development, which could include multifamily, single family, and commercial land. It also includes the proposed annexation of 26.13 acres on the west side of Highway 287, as I previously stated, and a concept plan amendment for the 22.3 acres on the east side of Highway 287 to allow for a mix of residential types, small scale commercial uses, and an RTD parking facility. Next slide, please. And with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer Hewitt-Apperson, who can talk about annexation eligibility. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. So just to start off, there are 2 key criteria for annexation eligibility. These are defined by state statute as well as memorialized in intergovernmental agreements with Boulder County and other adjacent communities. So this property is within the Longmont planning area, and it meets the 1/6 contiguity requirement for annexation. So what that means is at least 1/6 of the perimeter of the property has to be adjacent to the city of Longmont municipal boundary. In this case, 29% of the property is contiguous to the city of Longmont, so just under a third. So it more than meets that requirement. Next slide. So just want to talk a little bit about Envision Longmont and how it relates to this property. So you'll see on this map a clip and inset for of the general area. The subject property is indicated with a red star on this map. So currently this is designated for single family neighborhood. There is a comprehensive plan amendment that will ultimately be part of this. When this property has been, there have been a couple of different proposals for this property. In 2021, there was a proposal that did not go through, but it went to the annexation referral process. And City Council at the time did ask that higher density be considered for this site, given the adjacency to Highway 287. So this current proposal that the applicant will go in more detail over does contemplate that recommendation, and so that is, what is being considered. So I'm going to take a quick note. On this map, you'll see the blue line on Vermilion Road. That is the Longmont planning area boundary. The green, all of the green land to the north of this property is designated as parks, greenways, and open space on the Envision Longmont future land use map. The vast majority of these lands are either owned outright by Boulder County or have some sort of a permanent conservation easement on them. The fact that they are in green on the comprehensive plan map means that they are not contemplated for future development. So effectively, this property is as far north as development can go in the city of Longmont. So even though the planning area is a bit farther north, because these areas in green are designated for parks, greenways, and open space, they cannot be developed. So we anticipate those properties to remain in their current state with basically agricultural type lands. So, and then you'll see on the opposite side of the street, opposite side of 287 is designated as regional center and multifamily neighborhoods. So that is the area where the Walmart currently is. There's an apartment complex over there. It's higher intensity development. So next slide. So I'd also like to point out that the Envision Longmont includes descriptions of parts of the planning area as areas of change and areas of stability. This particular property is designated as an area of change. I'll note also Envision Longmont was adopted in 2016, so it's had this designation for about 8 years now. So areas of change, what that means is they are undeveloped areas that have been determined to be appropriate for future development, or they're developed areas with potential for infill or redevelopment. This particular property is the first type. So it hasn't been developed, but it has been identified as appropriate for future development. Next slide. So our intergovernmental agreement with Boulder County addresses county enclaves. So this is more or less a county enclave. It is a, it's adjacent to incorporated city of Loveland, or city of Longmont, I apologize, and is within the Longmont planning area. What our IGA with Boulder County says is that the city effectively should annex these areas that are adjacent to the municipal service area, so adjacent to city of Longmont, within what is identified as the potential annexation area, that they should be brought into the city to ensure that adequate facilities and services are provided and to ensure that future development is consistent with the goals and policies of the city. This has been a provision of that IGA for quite some time, and it was renewed earlier this year. So I will also say that the city does not annex properties that the owner does not want to annex. So if you are not within the city of Longmont and you don't want to be within the city of Longmont, as a general rule, you don't have to be in the city of Longmont. So we typically only annex properties when the property owner requests that they be considered for annexation. Next slide. So I'll also note that based on research of prior comprehensive plans for the city of Longmont, so this comprehensive plans dating at least back to 1995 have identified this subject property as an area for future neighborhood development. So this particular area has been in the sites for quite some time. So it's been about 30 years that the city's planning documents have shown this area as, you know, somewhere that would be a place that would be appropriate for future development. And again, as I noted, the conservation, the greenway, the open space designated area to the north, that's as far, that is not something that would be developed. So this property is about as far north as we can go within our planning area. Next slide. I'll turn it back over to Nathan.
Thank you, Kristen and Jennifer. So here I just wanted to take a second and go through like the permitting process that this proposal would have to go through before any sort of approvals are made and before any sort of construction can commence. This neighborhood meeting is the first step in the process. We require a neighborhood meeting for any major development application. And the city of Longmont considers concept plan amendments and annexation requests and even platting certain types of plats to be major development applications. So the neighborhood meeting is required before the applicant is even allowed to submit a formal application and before we even review any sort of more technical documents in terms of what the proposal will include. So after the neighborhood meeting commences, the applicant would be able to submit applications for a concept plan amendment and the application for an annexation request. The concept plan amendment and the annexation are both, like I mentioned earlier, major development applications. Those two development types are approved by the City of Longmont City Council and have to go to public hearings they have to go through a public hearing process at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Planning and Zoning Commission will vote on a recommendation that will then ultimately be sent to the City Council. There will be another public hearing for that request by City Council, when those dates have been solidified. Those public hearing dates will also be in person at the City Council chambers. So there'll be an opportunity for members of the community to come out to those public hearings and again, voice any comments or questions that they may have at those public hearing for those public hearing items. So once the concept plan amendment and an annexation request, if they are approved by the City Council, the applicant will then be able to move forward into the platting and site planning process. It's the platting process and the site planning process that you really start to get an idea of the more technical details of what this development would consist of. So platting is where we would lay out all of the lots, identify where different residential lots would be placed, where all of the utilities would come from, and what the street layout would look like. The preliminary plat is an overview of how all that stuff is going to work together. That also is a major development application, which requires approval in a public hearing by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So there again will be another opportunity for members of the community to come out and participate in the process. And then if Planning and Zoning Commission approves those preliminary plats, the applicant would be able to move forward with final plats and site plans. Once we start to get down to final plats and site plans, that's when we really get into very technical documentation that is administratively reviewed and approved by city staff in conformance with the approved preliminary plan and concept plan and annexation. If there's anything that comes up at the time of final plat and site plan that is not in conformance with any of those other pieces, the concept plan or the annexation agreement or the preliminary plat, then we have to start the process all over again and kind of go back to square one and begin all of this all over again. Once the site plan has been approved by the Development Review Committee, it's at that stage that the applicant would be able to move forward with any sort of building permits and construction. So as I mentioned, we're at the very, very early stages of this. It's very conceptual at this stage. We don't know a lot of the details, but we're going to, as we move through the review process, that's when those details will come out. And there will be multiple steps along the way for public participation and approvals by City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission. Next slide. So here, that concludes the city staff presentation. I'm going to hand it over to the applicant, and they're going to go over a short presentation of their own.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Niels. I work for a company called Actis, which is based here in Longmont. We've been in business for over 25 years. The vast majority of our holdings are in Longmont, and most of our company's earnings are reinvested here locally. I thank all of you for being here on the call with us tonight. I think the city staff did an incredible job of setting the stage here. Kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but I want to build on a few of their comments and start with a little bit of the history on this site. As Jennifer mentioned, it has been in the annexation kind of queue for a very long time and was first petitioned for annexation in 2021 by a national public home builder called Meritage Homes with a plan for 100 single-family homes. During that time, the city council indicated that given the housing shortage in Longmont and the lack of available land, they wanted to see an application for this site that included significantly more density. Recognizing that their plan wouldn't be approved by city council, Meritage Homes decided not to further pursue the site, and that's when our company got involved. So with the understanding that any proposal we brought forth would need to include more density, we hired Kimley Horn to assist us in laying out the site in a way that achieved the city goals, but also that made a reasonable transition to the density of the surrounding communities. Dallas, will you advance the slide? So this is a shot of the two sites that are in the process. Dallas, will you advance the slide again? So this is a comprehensive plan that the Kimley Horn team has put together. And, I'll state at this stage, this is the beginning of a very long process for us. And really what this plan has aimed to do is give an indication of what types of uses we'd like to have on the site and where we would like to put those various uses. So, I want to point out a few things. As Kristen mentioned, the 4 different uses on the site are low density residential, higher density residential, commercial, and then 4 acres set aside for an RTD park and ride. So as you can see in this diagram, the lower density housing is on the south and west portion of the site, the higher density on the northeast site, with most of it put on the east side of 7. That's also where the commercial and RTD sites will be. The location of these uses is very intentional in a way that we think provides a transition from the lower density housing in the Willis Heights neighborhood into the higher density in the northeast portion of our site. And by low density, the anticipation for that area is that it'll really be single family homes and potentially some duplexes and or townhouses. And I think our intention is to have the larger lots with the detached single family houses out on the perimeter of the project. As you can also see, there are a few parks scattered through, especially the west side of the development, and everything will be connected by streets and sidewalks. And while I know there's no details around kind of what things will look like, everything on this will be subject to the design standards of the city of Longmont. Another thing I wanted to touch on was traffic. I know there will be a lot of questions surrounding traffic, and I want to say up front that we've hired a third-party traffic engineer to study the impacts of this project. The study will include anticipated trip generations, anticipated added traffic counts to each of the surrounding roads, anticipated traffic routing, as well as suggestions for traffic calming measures such as turn restrictions, speed bumps, signage, and things along those lines. This report will be made available to the public and will need to be reviewed and approved by the City Council in a public meeting. Finally, I just want to conclude my remarks by saying that we know that change is hard, and our whole team is here tonight to listen and learn. So we appreciate you being here and the comments that you're bringing forth. That concludes my remarks for the evening. Thank you.
All right, so this is Nathan again. We will move into the Q&A portion of the evening. So again, as I mentioned at the top of this is a live streamed meeting. It will be saved on the City of Longmont's YouTube channel for future reference. So as such, we do try to hold ourselves to the standards of any public hearing. So when folks call in, here's some things that we just wanted to go over before we get into the question and answer period. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak. During that time, you're more than welcome to ask any questions that you have and make any comments that you have. We're going to be taking notes on the side of any questions that come up, and we're going to answer all the questions once all the speakers have concluded their comments. When it's your turn to speak, we ask that you just state your name and identify generally where you live. We ask that you keep any questions and comments related to this current proposal. So the current proposal being the concept plan amendment request and the annexation request. And then we also ask that everyone be additive and not repetitive. And by that, we mean that if somebody ahead of you made the same comment that you were going to make, you're more than welcome to say, hey, I agree with what that earlier person said. And keep your comments short. Or if you have something else that you'd like to add on to them, feel free to. But as long as we're moving in a positive manner with our comments, that'll help us get the most out of this meeting as possible. And then finally, we just ask that everybody remain civil. Like I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a lot of ambiguity and a lot of questions that are raised. And part of this review process is to try to nail down how we can best respond to those questions and concerns, and how this project can move forward in the best possible way. So with that, next slide. Now's the time to call in, and I will hand it over to Dallas to go over this slide.
Sure thing. Thanks, Nathan. So yes, we are now going to take callers' questions and comments. I'm setting a timer for 5 minutes. Callers, if you are watching the live stream, this is your time to call in. The number is 1-888-788-0099. When you are prompted, enter the meeting ID 858-2272-3191. I'm going to be taking callers by the last 3 digits of their phone number. And so, once you are in the queue, you'll be muted, but I will prompt you based on the last 3 digits of your phone number, and then we will have you come in and we'll give you your 3 minutes to ask any questions or any comments that you might have. With that, we've got around 5 minutes. Thanks. Folks, we're at about a minute left here for callers to call in. We do have some callers already, and we'll start taking those once this timer is up. But if you are still watching the live stream and you have not called in, this is your last chance to do so. Again, the number is 1-888-788-0099. The meeting ID is 858-2272-3191. We're going to start taking those callers in about 30 seconds. All right, that is our time. I am going to drop the slide. And we will start off with our first caller. First caller with the last 3 digits of your phone number 271. Caller 271, please hit *6 on your device to unmute.
Hello,
Hello, please state your name and address for the record, please.
this is Roberta Tanner, and we live at 12761 Woodland Drive.
Thanks, Roberta. You have 3 minutes.
I have many comments, but I'll just state one, and hopefully other people will state some of the others. But when Walmart was built, our neighborhood and the city agreed that we would prevent our neighborhood being subject to through traffic. And they did that through some pretty simple measures. Looking at the mailing, it looks as if there's a little section that comes into our neighborhood on the streets. I want to know how we can ensure that our neighborhood is not used for through traffic. And in addition to that, sorry. I forgot what else I was going to say. Oh, and who's going to maintain our streets? They've been kind of not maintained by Boulder County. Those are my 2 questions right for now.
Thank you, Roberta. So we are planning to answer all questions towards the end. You are welcome to hang on in the live stream, though. And if
All right,
you
thank you.
have any follow-ups, you can hit *9 once time is over to raise your hand for a 1-minute follow-up. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go into our next caller. Caller with the last 3 digits, 309. Caller 309, would you please hit *6 to unmute? Caller with the last 3 digits of your phone number, 309. Caller 309, would you please hit *6 to unmute? All right, we're going to come back to you, 309. Caller with the last 3 digits. Oh, there you are.
Hello.
Caller with the last 3
Yeah.
digits of your phone number. Make sure that you have that live
I'm
stream
right
muted in the
here.
background. Yep, because we can hear me coming through twice.
Okay, I'll do the best I can. I went around, I live in the neighborhood, and I went around and had a petition signed and handed it in.
Do you mind stating name and address for the record, please?
It's Susan Felix on Columbine Drive in the Willis Heights neighborhood.
Thanks, Susan.
And
Go right ahead. Do you mind muting the? We can still hear that live stream coming in.
I can't mute it. I'll walk in the other room.
Okay.
Okay. I had a petition signed to stop the traffic in our neighborhood. We're county. The property that they're trying to build on is agricultural, and it's county. And the neighborhood is pretty upset that they're trying to put this in. And one of the gentlemen that you have on the plan in low density, he owns the northern part of the property, and he's not selling. So I don't know what you're going to do. You should, if you're going to do this, you should have entrance off of 287. We do not want anything in our neighborhood. Hello?
Yep, we're still here. Thanks, Susan. Yeah, we'll be responding to and answering any questions at the end of the time. You're welcome to hang out in the live stream until the end. Do you have any other questions or comments for the time being?
Not right now.
Okay, thanks. We're going to keep on rolling. Our next caller is caller with the last 3 digits of your phone number, 517. Caller 517. Please hit *6 to unmute.
Hi, this is Kim Falcons. I live on Waterbury Road,
Hey, Kim.
and I had a question. I had a couple questions. Since we will be surrounded by City of Longmont land, and your annexation that you showed earlier says if it's 29%, you're automatically going to become part of the City of Longmont. But Jennifer also said that you wouldn't annex us if we didn't want to be annexed. So I'm not sure which one it is. When I did read the law, so I'm a little confused there. 2, I'm pretty sure that this is going to happen whether we want it to or not, but I'm sure we prefer to have single family homes only on the west side of 287. Most of us don't care what happens on the other side of 287, but the west side, we'd prefer that to all be single family homes instead of the high density also. I think that would ruin the character of our neighborhood. It doesn't really show which roads will come through our neighborhood and how that's going to connect. That's unclear to us by looking at the plan. I think that's all I have for now.
Great. Thank you, Kim. We will keep going to our next caller. Caller with the last 3 digits, 567. Caller 567, would you please hit *6 to unmute? Hello.
Hi, this is Greg Prosser. I live on Waterbury Road in Willis Heights. And
Go
I
for it,
agree
Greg.
with pretty much all of the traffic issues that people have mentioned. I will add that when they built the neighborhood north of us, the big huge houses, and that plan was in place, and they said they would build a park adjacent to our neighborhood, and that park was never built. And also, when the Walmart thing was done, I just feel that our voices aren't ever heard. And what the council does, whatever it wants, regardless of what the people want. And that seems to be a big issue that I've seen in the city of Longmont, that they're just out for their own interests and don't seem to care about the interests of the people. And I guess it's, I mean, I'm going to live on the main drag here of this. If this happens, I'm going to be on the main drag, and the traffic is a big concern. So I guess that's all I'll state right now.
Thank you, Greg. Our next caller with the last 3 digits, 945. Caller 945, please hit *6 to unmute. Hello.
Yeah, my name is Philip Duclos. I live on Hillcrest Drive in Willis Heights.
Go for it, Philip.
Yeah, as you've heard, traffic's a big issue. It was a big issue when Walmart was built. And I think the majority of the residents here weren't in favor of the Walmart development because of the connection of Park Ridge into the development. Some years ago, Boulder, well, it's been more like 15, Boulder County rather surreptitiously changed the master plan so that they would not maintain secondary roads within the county and allowed them to become unmaintained, and then gave us a choice of either paying with a special assessment or paying with a special assessment that they imposed. And that was taken care of through legal means, and we were able to recoup our money. But it doesn't look as if you have an entrance off 287 into this development. It looks as if the southern tail, this was already mentioned. The southern tail of the property connects with Park Ridge, which means you're going to funnel traffic from all that development down onto Park Ridge. And Park Ridge goes both ways, east and west, which means that those people going west from your development will go west on our county roads in our rural subdivision. And, you know, that's not something that any of the residents want. So we're paying for those roads, and the county has not been maintaining those roads, and you're looking at adding quite a bit of traffic with all of your high density along 287. You need a better plan. And, you know, you either need to fix our roads and agree to maintain our roads, or you need to get a better plan with entrance off 287. I don't think you're going to get an entrance off 287, at least not one that goes a full stoplight. That's probably not in CDOT's planning for 287. So you need to consider making us happy here with restrictions on traffic, or doing away with the high density housing. I think we could all probably live with low density housing.
30 seconds.
But the high density housing is most undesirable.
Thank you, Philip. We're going to go to our next caller. Caller with the last three digits 348. Caller 348. If you were there, please hit *6 to unmute.
Lucas Black, on Park Ridge Avenue. I appreciate Mr. Neal acknowledging traffic is an issue, as everyone's been saying. Really hoping that third-party report is a lot more detailed at these early stages than would be normal. What we look for. As other people have mentioned, Park Ridge gets a lot of cut-through traffic from 66 over to 287, so we're already dealing with a lot of that. Couple questions. Will there be any pedestrian access for us through the neighborhood? We seem like we're a pretty active community and do a lot of walking, so some trails, any access would be great. And then also, is there any more information for the RTD facility you guys could share? Curious what that might bring with it. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller. Caller with the last three digits 022. Caller 022. Please hit *6 to unmute. Hello.
Hi, this is Beth and Jim Taylor. We're on Columbine Drive in the Willis Heights neighborhood. And we also want to say ditto to everything that has been said already. But we're also concerned a little bit about the RTD parking and what kind of crime that possibly could bring to our neighborhood. We already have a lot of homeless people around here, and we're not very pleased about that. And also the traffic on 287 and at 66. There have been numerous accidents with the speed limit being so high and people not paying attention to the speed limit even. So we're concerned about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller. Caller with the last three digits 536. Caller 536. Please hit *6 to unmute. Caller with the last three digits 536. If you are there, please hit *6 on your device to unmute. All right, we're going to go to our last caller. We'll come back to you, 536. Oh, there you are. Perfect timing.
Hello, sorry. This is Yvette Valdez. My husband's name is Patrick Valdez. and we live at 12899 Columbine Drive. We've lived here for over 16 years. We love our neighborhood since we've been here. And a lot of the concerns that everybody else has been having, we have too. The traffic concerns. We're one of the people that put our signature on that petition that Susan Felix spoke about earlier. And my initial question, and I'm not sure if that was included in some of the other questions, will Park Ridge be the only entrance to the west portion of 287 to our property? Our properties off of 287, and just concerned about the same things that everybody else has been saying, the housing that you're planning, and also the just the issues with traffic. People do come through here regardless of the sign off of by Hillcrest and 66 that says it's not a throughway to Walmart. They still do that, but we see it all the time. So I have my husband and I have some of the same concerns as everyone else. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to our last caller with the last 3 digits, 789. Caller 789. Please hit *6 on your device to unmute. Hello.
Hi, this is Jay Davis. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead, Jay.
I live at 10651 Park Ridge Avenue. No one has more to lose from this potential development than I do. I am the first house in the neighborhood right on that southern nub. And I specifically want to know what you intend to do with that chunk of annexed land. As others have mentioned, routing traffic onto Park Ridge Avenue would be absolutely disastrous for my safety. I am a quadriplegic and a wheelchair user who walks frequently in the neighborhood. And due to the unmaintained sidewalks that in the streets that others have mentioned, I walk in the street. Putting more traffic into the neighborhood would put my life, my dog's life, my wife's life at jeopardy. So under no circumstances could it be allowed to route the traffic through the neighborhood onto Park Ridge Avenue. I know that's a concern others have voiced already, but that's a very specific use case for me as a wheelchair user. So I would like to know what you intend to do with that nub of land. The other thing is that I moved to this neighborhood to get out of the dense urban sprawl. Do whatever you want on the east side of 287, but the west side in the Park Ridge Avenue neighborhood is an absolutely phenomenal, wonderful, peaceful community. And I live on one of the smallest lots here that's 1/3 of an acre. If lots on this side of the highway are any less than that, it would destroy everything that makes this neighborhood a fantastic and wonderful place to live. I've met many of the folks on this call out walking my dog, and it's a wonderful community that cannot be encroached upon. The only true compatible land use is agricultural. I know you're going to ignore that. You don't care about what the neighborhood residents have to say, but the very least you could do is give us a buffer between our houses and any new homes built. You could ensure that traffic is routed only onto Highway 287, and otherwise leave Willis Heights neighborhood out of the congestion, the crime, and everything else that you intend to bring with this development. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, that is our last caller. So I'm going to hand it back over to staff and the applicants.
All right, so so this is Nathan again. We took some notes on everybody's questions and comments. I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'll mention it again. Since we're so early on in the process, a lot of these questions are going to be ironed out over time as this project kind of moves through review process and goes to City Council for approval with the different conditions that are made. So there's a lot that we don't know at this stage, but again, we're here to take in as many comments as we can so that we have an opportunity at the beginning to incorporate as many comments and concerns as we can. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer, who wanted to respond to, there was a question about annexation. So I think we'll punt that over to Jennifer to answer that question.
Great, thanks, Nathan. So I believe it was Ms. Belkins, if I have the name correct. If not, I apologize for butchering it. So the question, you had a question about automatically being annexed if eligible, and if Willis Heights was part of this annexation. So Willis Heights is not part of this annexation. And I will also add that annexation is not automatic if you meet the contiguity requirement. It just means this property is eligible for annexation. Ultimately, City Council is the deciding body on whether or not this property is annexed into the city, and the proposed concept plan and comprehensive plan amendment are approved. So, and it would only apply to the properties shown on the concept plan presented by the applicant. It does not include any other properties. So just wanted to put that concern to bed. We do not annex properties that the owner does not seek to annex as a general rule. And we would not be considering annexation of anything beyond what Actus is proposing. The other question, there was concern about potential crime and the RTD parking. So the proposed RTD facility, and I will let Chris and his team address this in much more detail, is on the east side of 287. So it has no adjacency to the Willis Heights subdivision. It would be immediately north of Walmart. It would be right by an existing apartment complex over on the east side of 287. As far as the crime impact, we do have public safety, who is a reviewing body on our development review committee. Our development review committee is a very robust interdisciplinary group of reviewers from a variety of departments, and it includes representatives from public safety. So, I personally wouldn't, I can't speak for certain, but I would not anticipate that there would be an increase in crime. Now, there was also the same caller who asked about that was already commenting there are a lot of homeless people in the area. So I drive by this property every day, and I can tell you I definitely have noticed homeless encampments on this particular property and nearby properties as well. As there is, if this property is annexed and if this property is developed, I think you would likely see less of that, because you would have more eyes on the streets, as we like to say. So it's a multifaceted issue. But I can't say that you would necessarily see any increases. You might see decreases in the homeless population, because typically the unhoused population doesn't necessarily want to be where other people are. So it can have a deterrent effect. So that's pretty much what I'll say about that. But that is also something, again, I'll let Chris and his team address that in more detail, both of those concerns. And I'll turn it back over to Nathan.
Yeah, I guess the only other point I would add on to what Jennifer said is that, when we're reviewing for those, when that question would come up in terms of site design, that usually comes up during the site planning process. And as Jennifer mentioned, one of our reviewers does review for how to, design structures in a way that it creates naturally crime-free environments. So that's looking at things that like positioning of lighting, making sure that there are no dim or dark spots, making sure that the access points have a lot of that there is a lot of that access points to facilities are well lit, and that they have plenty of connectivity throughout. So that is something that we do review for during the review process. That's something that would kind of come down and be looked at further down the line. Chris, anyone from your team want to respond to the question about the design of the RTD station and what you're contemplating at this time?
I can try. The RTD hasn't given us a ton of information about their intentions for this particular piece. We had a call several months ago in which they indicated that their initial thoughts are that there are some local routes that currently stop on Park Ridge Avenue, just north of Walmart. So they would move all of that activity off the street into a park and ride facility. And then I believe they're exploring some additional regional bus routes, both north and south, that would come from this particular location. I don't think that they're doing anything more than parking stalls and maybe a few shade rain structures. But again, we don't have a lot of insight into what their exact plans are for this site.
Thanks, Chris. I think let's move on to some other questions that came up. Kristen, did you want to respond to questions about connectivity and pedestrian access?
Sure, I certainly can do that, Nathan. So I heard several people mention some concerns and questions in reference to connectivity, and that would be both vehicular and pedestrian connectivity. So in accordance with code regulations, connectivity is always sought. You never want to have a situation where you have a road to nowhere or a sidewalk to nowhere. So as we go through this process, and keep in mind, we're very high level right now at annexation, we will be looking for those opportunities for appropriate connections, both pedestrian and vehicular. I know that Roseland Avenue is in the Willis Heights neighborhood. The right-of-way is platted to that lot line with this property, which typically gives us that opportunity for connectivity. But obviously we will have to have a lot of conversations and reviews before we come to any point where we have those details confirmed. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. I think Kristen raised a good point here in that, when this application is submitted, it'll go to the DRC Commission or the DRC review team, which is an administrative, like Jennifer was saying, it's essentially city staff members will review the request. And when it comes in, we review the request based on approval criteria from the Land Development Code, and then any other guiding documents that we have. And we generate a recommendation that we then provide to the Planning and Zoning Commission, who will then vote on that recommendation and then send that recommendation to City Council. City Council throughout this process is the final decision-making body, and they have the ability to either accept staff's recommendation or add conditions, additional conditions to staff's recommendation, or come up with their own determination as to whether or not to approve the request. So again, I think it's very important that folks listening in pay attention to when we send out the notices for when those public hearings are going to occur. Once a formal application is actually submitted, we'll also send out a notice of application. So folks will have an opportunity to actually comment on something on the application once it's submitted. We'll compile all those comments and we include all of that to the different decision-making bodies when we put together our recommendation and our staff report. So I guess we've kind of gone through quite a few of the comments and questions. I do want to, again, kind of hand it over to Chris or anyone from the applicant team. Is there anything else that you guys want to respond to, or any other comments that you want to make?
I think one clarification that I maybe didn't highlight well enough in my comments earlier was that primary access for this site is envisioned to be from 287 directly on and off. And I think one of the callers, I'm sorry I didn't write your name down, did mention that working with CDOT will be required to do that, and that those conversations have been initiated. We've been given guidance that we will be given some access to 287 directly from our site. Exactly what that access is in terms of whether it would be signalized, rights in, rights out, full movement, are still up for discussion, and will be a part of the traffic study that we are conducting, and very much hear everybody on the call about the concerns of traffic. And I know that report and that consultant's work will be a really important part of this process.
That was what I was going to add to as well, is talk about access points.
All right. Let's see. I think we did have one question from a hand raised from a caller, 789. Dallas, do you want to help me out with responding?
Yeah, sure thing. Caller 789, you can hit *6 now to unmute, and you've got a minute for a question or follow-up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for clarifying the point that primary access would be Highway 287. I would also like to encourage you to do what you can to protect the Willis Heights neighborhood, possibly rather than considering parks in the center of your low-density housing, maybe putting a green belt between the existing Willis Heights homes and any new properties built would help appease a lot of us and keep the traffic routed out onto 287 out of our neighborhood. I know that would do a considerable amount to appease a lot of my concerns. With no traffic but more access to parks, I think a lot of us would be okay with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
All right. Well, I think we can move on with the presentation and just kind of wrap everything up here. Dallas, do you mind bringing up the rest of the presentation?
Sure thing.
All right, so I did just want to go over some next steps and kind of explain what everyone can expect moving forward. So as I mentioned, this is the very, very early stages of the application process. The next steps would be the actual submittal of an application. Like I mentioned, we'll send out a notice of application and post signs on the site, so folks will be made aware of when the actual application is submitted. We'll also include city contact information in that notice. So once the application is submitted, you'll be able to contact us and we'll provide you with whatever information that you want to see. We can provide you with any application materials that you'd like to review and give you an opportunity to send us any comments that you may have on the proposal. Once that application is submitted, it'll go through the technical review process that we talked about by the DRC. Once we've completed that review, and I should also note that these review processes usually take quite some time. We go back and forth with bringing up items that need to be addressed, and then the applicant will then respond to those comments. So the review process can take several months. But once we finalize the review of the request, city staff will develop a recommendation, and we'll set the dates for public hearings when the concept plan amendment and the annexation request will go to the Planning and Zoning Commission first, and then once the Planning and Zoning Commission has held a public hearing and voted on a recommendation, then we'll hold another public hearing at City Council, and again, notice will be sent as to the date and time and location of all those public hearings. So that's kind of what the community can expect for next steps. Next slide, please. Here we have some contact information. As I mentioned, my name is Nathan Jones. My email address is nathan.jonesmeyer@longmontcolorado.gov, and my phone number is 303-774-3585. In the meantime, between now and when the applicant submits an application, please feel free to send me any other comments or questions, or if you feel like we weren't able to respond to one of the questions that was raised tonight, or if you just think of another question that comes up, send that my way, and I'll do my best to try to answer that question. I also have the applicant's information here as well. His name is James Waller. It's james.waller@kimley-horn.com. His phone number is 970-986-4938. That wraps up our discussion for this evening. I hope you all have a very good night, and thank you very much for joining. See you soon.